Hi, welcome back to Cooking with ABN. My name is Ashley Beal and I'm a registered dietitian. Today we have with us my friend and fellow dietitian, Lindsay Krasna, who's here to share one of her favorite recipes with us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Ashley. I'm excited to cook with you all today, and I have a special recipe that I would love to share. It's called stuffed peppers, and it's a recipe that my mom made for me a lot growing up, and one that I love to make now as an adult, both for myself as well as for friends when I'm hosting, people over. It's just a really great meal and super delicious and easy. So yeah, look forward to it. For ingredients today, we will need 6 bell peppers. I find that this is enough for leftovers as well, or to share with friends. We will also need green onions or scallions. We'll need some feta cheese. Next is craisins. You can also use raisins or any kind of dried fruit really that is small. We also have couscous. If you prefer to make it into a gluten-free version, you can also do rice or another type of starch. Ground beef. I love using the 85% lean, 15% fat version. I just find that that is the most flavorful. And then we have butter, cooking spray, pepper, and salt. For cooking equipment, you'll need a large mixing bowl with a spoon to mix. You'll need a knife. We'll also need a cutting board. We'll need a pan. And then we'll need a medium to smallish pot with a cover. And we'll need a baking pan.
You will have to excuse this next part. We had some technical difficulties with the mic, but I will go ahead and fill us in. Here, Lindsay is explaining how she likes to prepare and chop the veggies first. She finds this part to be the most tedious, so she likes to go ahead and get it out of the way. But if you want to skip ahead and make the starch and the beef first, you can also do that and come back to this part. So to start, we are going to prepare our veggies by rinsing them off. And then we're going to start by dicing our scallions. Here you can see Lindsay has put together a couple of scallions, chopping them all at the same time just to make it easier. She also shared a tip with us that she learned during her nutrition program where you make a C with your fingers so that way it prevents them from being cut with a knife. As registered dietitians, we are not chefs, but this has been something that has stuck with both of us and does make chopping veggies a little bit easier. Here Lindsay was also explaining how she usually cuts all the way up into the white part of the scallion. And then we will add those to our mixing bowl to free up the cutting board to cut our bell peppers. When Lindsay's making her bell peppers, she typically cuts off the top part of the bell pepper, like you're seeing her do here, using the C claw. And you see it comes off really nicely. And then all she had to do next was grab the middle part, and it actually pops out really easily. So then you are left with a nice empty bell pepper, ready for our stuffing. With the tops of the bell peppers, Lindsay will save those and actually use those for snacks later on in the week, whether it's dipping it in some kind of dip or hummus, eating it alongside the leftover stuffing that we made, or anything else that you like to do with it. It was surprisingly satisfying to take out the inside of the bell pepper, as well as pop off the stem of the top part. We were also admiring how it looked like a little flower ring. It was very cute. And then we were just going to do the same exact thing with the rest of the bell peppers. As we're preparing our bell peppers, we're also going to go ahead and put them into a greased baking dish, spraying it with a little bit of that oil spray that we had put aside in our ingredients, and then layering each individual bell pepper into the pan, just like that. And then again, we will chop the top off of the bell pepper, take the insides out with our hands, and then do this with the rest of our peppers. This is me showing you what the inside of the pepper looks like once you cut it. This will be the part that we pull out to empty our bell peppers. Now that our veggies are ready to go, it is time to prepare our couscous and our ground beef. To prepare the couscous, we're just going to follow the instructions on the box. So first we are going to add about 2 cups of water to our large pot, adding a tablespoon of butter and a pinch of salt, and then bringing it to a boil. This is a perfect time to preheat your oven. Lindsay says that the recipe usually calls for 400 degrees, so you can give that a try if you'd like. However, she prefers to do it at 425 degrees. It doesn't mess up the recipe and it just cooks a lot more quickly. So we're gonna go ahead and do that now.
Okay, so we're just gonna turn up the burner here to high heat. And we'll just have it hang out there until the water boils. While we're waiting for that to boil, we're gonna go ahead and get started with the ground beef. So we'll turn the stove on for the pan for cooking the beef. And for this one, we're gonna heat this one a little bit lower, more on like medium heat. It's typically medium to medium high that we'll wanna cook the beef on. You can kind of adjust it based on your stove. We have the package of ground beef here. We're just gonna basically plop it right onto the pan and it comes out really nicely. Now, I personally like to wash my hands right after I do that, just because the ground beef, for food safety, better to wash your hands. So, okay, so as you can see, the beef is already starting to cook, and I'm just gonna take the spatula and kind of dig in there a little bit, try to break up the beef square a little bit so that we're starting to get the heat into the other parts.
And you may notice Lindsay's using a different utensil than we were using for mixing everything together, just because we don't want it to cross-contaminate.
As you can see, the water is pretty much to a boil, so it's ready to throw in the couscous. And like I said, in this case, we're gonna just make the whole box. So thank you, Ashley. We'll dump that in and give it a quick stir. Believe it or not, we're actually just gonna turn the heat completely off and then we cover it. Now the directions say cover it for 5 minutes. Thank you. I typically let it sit a little bit longer than 5 minutes. I just let it sit until I'm done prepping the beef, which sometimes takes a little bit longer than 5, but it doesn't have to be an exact science. There's no harm if it sits a little bit longer.
Yes. That's a good idea to time it with the amount of time that you're using to cook the beef, because it's similar. So
exactly.
That's really nice.
Yeah. All right, so the beef is looking pretty good. It's pretty much ready. You can tell that by making sure that the insides are no longer red. But even if you're not sure, you can rest assured that the beef is also gonna be further cooked when it goes into the stuffed peppers into the oven. So that always just makes me feel a little comforted. This is perfect timing because our couscous is also done. Now for the couscous, the last step is to fluff it. The directions say fluff it with a fork, but honestly, I usually just use a mixing spoon. It doesn't really matter, it's easy. You're just gonna kind of get at the bottom and fluff it up a little bit. Now we'll bring the couscous and beef over to the counter and we'll mix it in the mixing bowl. All right, so now it's basically mixing time. Let's start with taking the beef and we're just gonna pour it into the mixing bowl. I love getting all the juices. You can't really see here, but all that juice adds the flavor. And then next we'll put in the couscous. Would you like to do it, Ashley?
Yeah.
Yay. Teamwork.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and then we're gonna add our craisins. And last, we'll open the feta cheese and throw that in the mixing bowl as well.
Great.
Okay, so for the next step, we're just gonna mix it all together. And just to speak to the portions of all the ingredients, I typically just default to the package sizes that you saw there in the video, but you can also adjust to use more or less of any particular ingredient based on your tastes. And the other thing that's nice about this recipe is typically, at least the way I make it and that you'll see here, is that we'll probably have some leftover stuffing, and you can use that stuffing to have for leftovers. You can eat it on its own. You can, throw it over a salad. You can eat it with leftover rings of the peppers that we just cut out.
You can dip them in there.
You can dip it,
oh my
yeah,
gosh.
and kind of scoop it in as like a little lunch. So lots of things you can do.
Yeah.
And one last thing I forgot, the salt and pepper.
Yes, have to season it.
Yeah. I don't typically measure. Again, I kind of just guesstimate and throw a bunch in. And you can always add, to your stuffed pepper once you start eating it. If you feel like it needs a little bit more, you can just add it on at that point too.
Yeah, I love that.
Lots of colors, textures, flavors.
Mm-hmm.
Just basically mix it a bunch to the point that it's relatively distributed evenly throughout the bowl. All right, now we're gonna stuff these peppers up.
All right.
So I can do the first one, and then Ash, if you want to take a stab at it.
Yeah, here, I'll grab another spoon and then
great.
I can help.
Perfect. So yeah, I typically just grab pepper and then just kind of get it all in there. I sometimes will push it down a little bit just to maximize the amount that gets in there. Get it right to the top.
Nice.
And then in this case, for these particular peppers, the bottom, as you might be able to see, they're not all even, so they won't stand up in this lovely way. So we're gonna kind of put them on their side a little bit, which is totally fine, but it depends on the shape of the peppers that you get.
It all gets eaten the same way.
Yes.
Okay. Like
Beautiful.
that?
Yeah, love it.
Okay.
So we're all done with stuffing the peppers, so they are ready to go in the oven. And again, for the leftover stuffing, we can just keep this in this bowl, and if you want to put it in your fridge for leftovers, you can put it in a smaller Tupperware. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and put the stuffed peppers in the oven. I typically cook it for about 45 minutes. Sometimes it does need a little bit longer, so I would say kind of check it at 45 and see how it's going.
Now that we have that in the oven, Lindsay went ahead and set our timer for 45 minutes. So what we're gonna do is just kind of tidy up our space a little bit, and then we'll be back once it's ready. And the microphone malfunction strikes again, but you can still see how delicious our peppers looked. 45 minutes was the perfect amount of time and left it with a little bit of a roasted crust on top, which was fabulous. Here we are deciding what color bell pepper we want to have because each bell pepper has a little bit of a different flavor. Then Lindsay instructs us to actually slice the bell pepper down the middle just to open it up and make it a little bit easier to eat. I thought this was really cool because when I usually make my bell peppers, I slice them in half anyway because I just always found that as an easier way to eat them. So I love that you could also do it this way and then just cut it after they're cooked. So as always, we had to give it a try. And oh my goodness, it was so flavorful. There was sweet and savory, a little bit of crunch from the couscous at the top that got cooked in the oven. It was very delicious. So here I am thanking Lindsay for sharing this delicious recipe with us. She is giving us feedback on how much she enjoyed doing this and how food brings us together. And then as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Let us know what you think, and I will see you next time.